Welcome to Martini Time. Beautiful day here in Blackstone, Virginia, the center of the world. There's a big craft show here, and it was supposed to rain, so the weather report says 100%. It didn't rain at all. And it was cloudy, so beautiful day. I just went, my wife just came back. She was down there with her bookstore, library. And she met somebody from Old Dominion who had a booth about Old Dominion and said, I went there. And so they sent me a little T-shirt that says Old Dominion Alumni. And see, I went to Old Dominion before it was Old Dominion. I went to college there in Norfolk when I got out of the Navy in 1963, I believe, when it was William and Mary, the extension of William and Mary. And it became Old Dominion while I was there, so I graduated with Old Dominion. But anyway, that was a nice little, I felt like a graduate today. I felt like I've graduated. You have that feeling when you feel like you've broken through something. I named this talk here, the crack in the social ego. So let's talk about that. See, we all have an ego, but we don't think of it as a social or cultural ego. We think of it as a thing, and it may be some separate thing that stands alone that seems to be in the way of my enlightenment or perfection or whatever you see. But the ego is not the ego is a social /ego, which means that it is a collective and an individual relationship or entity that is mutually dependent. So you can't separate the ego from your culture. Oh, we all know this with children. I mean, an infant is born, and its first 6 years are years of what you would call direct experience of reality. It is directly experiencing reality without any filters. And its brain is incorporating what the sense data take in. Tasting, hearing, touching, learning. It's a beautiful thing. But then after 6, somewhere, the child begins to adapt to a cultural identity. It gets a name, starts going to school. It gets culturally adapted, takes on the language of its culture, the values of its parents, the whole catastrophe. And from then on, it begins to experience reality, not directly, but through the mediator of culture. And that is a semantic universe, world, held together by language and values enculturated into the language. So everything has a value according to your memory and the culture's memory. If the culture tells you black people are threats, well, then you experience black people as a threat. And you can't get out of it. Because the culturalization of the ego is unconscious. It's subliminal. So consciousness is kind of like a fish in a fish bowl, and the culture that shapes the bowl, the culture shapes the bowl. So you can't get out of the shape of water. The Shape of Water is unconscious. That's what that movie, The Shape of Water, was about. The culture of the 50s was unconscious, and the culture we live in now is unconscious. You only see the culture you're in now until you get older and look back. So I can look back at the 50s, I can look back at the 60s, I can look back at the 70s. All of these different decades have their own cultural flavor. But none were so dramatic as the 50s. So the crack in the cultural egg is when your questioning matures to the point where it begins to crack. And you have direct experience of reality through those cracks. And we think they're miracles. They're so surprising, so powerful, so luminous, our little cracks in the ego. Social ego, that we think it's a fluke. It doesn't fit our map. So the algae of culture closes back over. And our ego comes back, you see. Because with culture comes the ego. There is no separation of the two. It's like mother and child. The Madonna and the child. The Madonna, or the mother, is culture. In the East, it's called Maya. The illusion of phenomena. The belief in appearances, you see. All of that is culture. And it encloses us as an ego in it, and they're mutually dependent. So all the choices you have, all the yoga you do, all of the meditation, all of the studies, all of the conflicts and the non-dual and the dual, and all that's done within culture. All of that's done within the cultural framework, which is duality. Whatever you choose, there's an opposite that. Everything comes in pairs, like on Noah's Ark. You see? And we have the illusion, culture creates the illusion that as you bang around inside culture, fighting with your enemies, blaming them on your cultural pain, you see, you think you're getting out. Or you think you are out. But you're not, you see. So even when Jesus says, accept your enemies, he's trying to give you a clue on how to get out of the culture, how to get born again. So anyway, this crack in the cultural egg happens with a little, but it's always done from pecking. You know, the bird gets out of the egg not from the outside, but from the inside. So if you see somebody trapped in a cultural egg, you can't get out by tapping on their egg. It just gets stronger. And so we're all in a protective cultural egg, and whenever we feel anybody challenging it, we just strengthen the egg. It's instinct, it's survival. Has nothing to do with choice. It's survival, you know. So the only way to get out of the cultural egg, if somebody's in a cultural egg, and like these are like Russian nesting dolls, the big culture, then the smaller cultures all within, you see. So we all see somebody else in an egg, a cultural egg. Oh, you've got an addiction. You're really trapped. You're really ignorant or whatever. You're not rational. All of these things, you see. And of course, they can't see what you're talking about because they see what you're saying as trying to break their egg. So they just strengthen it, you see. The only way to get out of a cultural egg is from the inside. Breaking out. There's where the egg is weak, you see. So what is the beak that breaks the egg? Let me show you a picture. Where's my egg? Love this. A friend of mine had some emus, like smaller ostriches, and he gave me this egg. It's my favorite egg, you see. But here, you can see here, that's where the little bird inside began to peck. And he broke a hole. He broke a hole here, and he got out. So, what is the beak that pecks on the inside of your egg? It's the question. What's the truth here? What's going on here? I don't know. What's this confusion? What's this negativity? What's this doubt? What's this conflict that's always going on? What's this Groundhog Day? What's this repetition of emotional patterns that I just keep repeating? Why nothing changes? Oh, the outside may change, appearances may change, but it feels like the same thing on the inside. That's because I'm inside the egg. The egg on the inside looks like a panoramic movie screen. So what you see is the movie of reality on the inside of your egg, and you think it's the whole world. But it's opaque. And you only know it's an egg when you start to tap on it. Wait a minute, this is a movie screen. Wait a minute, I'm inside a compartment. I'm inside of something. What? Wait, as soon as you have the thought, the idea. I remember when I had it, I was in my 20s. Had the idea. suddenly, it wasn't a thought, it was an idea, a luminous idea that just rose in my mind. And it said, I am not my thoughts. Which means I am not my cultural social ego, which is maintained by thought, you see. I am not my ego, which is a thinking entity. I had an experience. I don't often share my experiences, but what the hell. So I was meditating in the ashram of Swami Muktananda in 1980. And I'd been there for about 4 or 5 days, and I was getting ready to leave. So it was just a noon chant. And I was sitting there. And suddenly this space opened up, and my thought, my ego, my thinking self was like hanging right there in front of me, like a worm on a hook. And I was thinking, but my thinking I was right there, thinking. And then this space opened up, like a luminous light, all-encompassing luminous here. And my thinking little self was pulled up into it like it was on a hook. Like God had just pulled it up in there. Whoop, So it goes up into that, and then it came back down, and my thinking self said, oh, that's what death is like. And for a couple of days there, I was in a state of peace that passed understanding. I had no conflict with anything. I was absolute peace. And then, of course, the social ego came back. The algae came back to the pond, Then life goes on. But anyway, so I had that one blessing of seeing my cultural ego right there in front of me, right there, wiggling, like a little squirmy worm. So anyway, this cultural ego, I've been reading, rereading the books of Joseph Chilton Pierce, Crack in the Cosmic Egg, Exploring the Crack in the Cosmic Egg, and I really recommend these books because they really explore the cultural ego, how the culture as a semantic language encapsulates us into an egg, and we sit inside watching the movies of reality in this panoramic screen that has no end. Thanks for dropping in.